thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
You found your way to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. We appreciate you joining us today. Be sure and visit our websites at wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. It's Friday, and every Friday, almost every Friday, we do a Good News Friday, which is where we bring you some good news from across the country, sometimes around the world, just looking at some of those great things happening out there, too often missed by the major media. And if you don't know the good stuff's happening out there, sometimes you start to wonder if anything good is happening. David, we talk about a lot of great stuff here on WallBuilders because you always have some good news for us. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton. David, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to follow up on Christmas. Christmas just a little over a week ago, and there's been some good stuff that happened as a result. And let's just start with Wisconsin. And Racine, Wisconsin, they've not had a nativity scene up there for 40 years. 40 years ago, the city decided that, oh my gosh, this kind of looks like it might be Christian. And of course, that's unconstitutional if something's Christian. You can have other religions, but certainly not Christianity. And so they took the nativity scene down. They broke it up into kindling wood. They were able to burn it, and they destroyed anything that appeared to have a Christian message to it. So for 40 years, Racine, Wisconsin has been a Christmas-free town. I guess, I don't know, Grinch or Scrooge or somebody probably enjoys being there.
Yeah, really.
But interestingly, Bob Wartock said, we need to change that. And so he went to the city, and the city said no. And so then he went to one of the community churches, Plymouth Congregational, and said, hey, let's put up a nativity scene. They said, hey, that's a good idea. And so he proceeded to go to other churches across town. He got 16 churches across town to say, we want a nativity scene up. And so he approached the city council, and city council said, no way we're putting church up. And he said, by the way, I've got 16 churches that want that. Okay, you can have your nativity scene. So simply having the churches step up and ask for it resulted in Racine this year having a nativity scene for the first time in 40 years.
It kind of makes you wonder when we're silent, or I should say not wonder, but no wonder that when we're silent, those kind of things happen. But, man, when we speak up with that kind of a unified voice, 16 churches, they're going to listen.
And it was interesting that there wasn't that much fight once they showed up. It wasn't like the churches had to fight and threaten a lawsuit or anything else. They just showed up and, 16 churches want it? Okay, fine with us. And apparently it's not a little bitty nativity scene that the city is using. It says here that they have to truck it in on a 40-foot trailer. Now, that's not just a real small trailer to have a nativity scene on. So looks like just churches stepping up and asking for it made a big difference. And by the way, I saw another story that was really cool out of Ohio where a pastor there normally has nativity scenes up and gets people to put them up and said, hey, let's make this a citywide effort. And went after 10,000 nativity scenes to be posted in town. So that's another fun one too, where you got pastors and leaders stepping up, and just doesn't take that much, but it makes a huge difference when they do.
Well, and this was one of those Christmases where we saw a lot of positive things like this. I mean, we had companies that after our Naughty and Nice episodes that we did with Matt Staver and Tim Wildman, that once people started making calls, and even you and I sent some emails into some of the stores that we were familiar with and shopped at a lot, we saw them do an about face and turn around and say, hey, we want to do the right thing by our customers, and started saying Merry Christmas.
Well, that's a great illustration, because back when we had Matt Staver on with the Friend or Foe, Christmas Friend or Foe, one of the things we talked about was on their list, they had Tractor Supply Company.
Yeah.
And so Tractor Supply was on there, and we're going, you got to be kidding us. I live in the country. Tim and I live on a ranch. And so here we are in country, and we're all from Texas. And so I sent them an email and said, you got to be kidding me. Do you not know who your demographic is? Are you unaware of rural folks? And then Tim sent an email, and then you contacted them. And What do we get? We get an email back from them and say, thank you for contacting Tractor Supply Company. We have never consciously chosen the word holiday over the word Christmas, and it's not our intention. This year our theme is Country Christmas, and they went on to say, man, if this is going on, it's not deliberate. And so we got that back to Matt Staver, and he promptly pulled them down off the naughty list and put them on the nice list. So there was just a matter of, I don't know how many other people sent emails, but I know 4 of us did. And so it was nice to see them reverse. And over on the AFA side, Smart Style, who is basically in every one of the Walmart stores, it's kind of their haircut thing in Walmart's. They had employees saying, no, we're not allowed to say Merry Christmas. And people said, well, say it to me. I want it. And we can't say it. We're not allowed to. And so people started contacting Smart Styles and saying, what are you guys thinking? And so Smart Styles, which is part of the Regis Corporation, came back and said, please know that there is not a corporate-wide policy at Regis Corporation. And so they go on and say, we didn't want that, and we're making sure every one of our employees and stores know that. And so they got it reversed and turned around. And again, it was because people contacted them. So, it does make a difference when people contact, and this is kind of the wrap-up for Christmas, but just looking back over the programs we had leading up to it, it is fun to see that people did make a move and did contact these stores, and the stores did respond, and that was good news.
That's a great way to start. This is our first Good News Friday of 2015. So what a great way to start. Good news from Christmas.
Rick, I want you to understand, just because I finished up from Christmas doesn't mean we're not going to do some more Christmas throughout the year. Okay? Just understand.
After all these years, I have succumbed to the David Barton Christmas year-round mentality. So exactly. I fully expect more Christmas.
That's right. So I didn't want you to think it was over just because we're now in the new year. So just a heads up.
All right, quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to get some more good news right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. In several decisions over recent years, the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that it is unconstitutional for the government to encourage religion. Did our founding fathers agree with this? Consider the words of Henry Laurens, a signer of the Constitution and a president of Congress. Henry Laurens declared, "I had the honor of being one who framed that Constitution. In order effectually to accomplish these great ends set forth in the Constitution, it is especially the duty of those who bear rule to promote and encourage respect for God and virtue, and to discourage every degree of vice and immorality." Founding Father Henry Laurens believed that the goals of the Constitution could not be fulfilled apart from a fear and a respect for God, and that it was therefore the duty of government to encourage this among the people.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Good News Friday today, so we're bringing you some good news from across the nation, and David Barton is with us with a big stack of good news. David, we got a whole year to get through some of this, so I'm sure there'll be more good news coming, but we have a lot from last year we never even got to on the program.
Yeah, there's a lot from last year, and kind of in the theme of wrapping up some of last year's stuff, we had Christmas last week. And so here's one that the football season's generally kind of coming to an end. It's not fully ended yet, but on the college side, it's, wrapping down. And one I should have got to 2 or 3 weeks ago and forgot to do, and this is where people really responded, was over at Arkansas State University. The players over at Arkansas State University put a small cross decal on their helmets to honor one of their fallen team members. And so they had done that, and there were people who argued, well, that violates separation church and state. And by the way, a little time out here. Look, separation church and state occurs at school generally because the courts say, hey, young people are too impressionable, and if you're below 18, you're a minor. They really don't know religion, whatnot. So that's where we're going to have to step in and stop religious expressions. But if you're an adult, if you're after 18, when you go to college, you're an adult and live with it. You don't always hear the things you want to hear, and you don't have a right not to be offended. And so the courts really do take a significantly different tact when you're considered to be an adult as when you're considered to be impressionable. Now, the ridiculous part of that is they consider that if you're 13 years old, you're mature enough to make decisions about sexuality in your body and abortions. But if you're 18 years old, you're not mature enough to make spiritual decisions. So they're inconsistent even on the way they draw ages. But they do say if you're a minor, then we have to protect you from religion because you're too impressionable. But when you become an adult, then they don't protect you from that kind of pressure unless it's flat coercion. So for college players to wear a decal on their helmet to honor a fallen team member with the initials of that team member by the cross, that's not a constitutional problem. I mean, that's a whole different thing, because at that level, you're not in the coercive state again. And it's de minimis kind of money that you're talking about. How much does it cost to put a decal on a helmet? It's not like you're doing what they did at the University of Michigan. They're putting $25,000 out for Muslim students to be able to have foot washing there at the university, and nobody yelled about separation church and state on that. But you may be talking $1, $2, $3, $4 on these decals. And so, the good news is that initially the university said you can't do that because they were threatened with separation church and state. And most folks, again, don't know the legal side of this. And so they think that because of what they hear on the news, you can't do this stuff, which is wrong. And then after people really weighed in and really got after them, they reneged and went back and said, no, it's fine for our players to be able to wear the decal. So the good news is, and I should have covered that a few weeks ago, the pressure of people calling Arkansas State University, they got to keep those decals on the helmets to honor their fallen team members. So that's a good football story that was worth covering. That's kind of a wrap-up from last year. Another kind of wrap-up from last year goes back to Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck, who's the quarterback from the Indianapolis Colts, I love this. It was just kind of a passing story. But the scriptures say in Proverbs 15, I love it in the NIV and the New Living Translation, it says, a soft answer breaks the most bone-like resistance. And giving a soft answer when you're not expected to just catches people off guard. And so it turns out that Andrew Luck, when he gets pounded by the defense, when they sack him, when they get a good hit on him or whatever, he'll reach over and even help pick him up. But he said, hey, good hit, buddy, or that was a good hit. So they're trying to knock the stuffing out of him. He turns around. He'd
actually say that to the guys that are hitting him.
Oh, yeah, he says that to the guys that are hitting him. I mean, he'll compliment them for a good hit on him. And it's really funny. I've kind of collected some of the statements, but linebacker Ryan Kerrigan from the Washington Redskins says, in all the years I've played football, I've never heard anything like it. and so he says there's nothing even close. And it's
probably hard to hit him as hard the next time.
That's right. The defensive guys say he's gotten in our heads. We don't want to hit him. He's a nice guy. We don't want to hit him as hard. And so here, Philadelphia Eagles defensive back Nolan Carroll said, I'm like, what's going on? Aren't you supposed to be mad? And then I'm the one who gets ticked off because an upbeat attitude isn't something I expect to see after I hit somebody. So it's great, these comments. But Andrew Luck, kudos to him for having a good attitude, and whether he intends to or not, I don't know whether he's a Christian, biblical, or a guy or not, but it is proof that the soft answer breaks the most bone-like resistance, even if you're a tough NFL defensive player trying to knock the stuffing out of the quarterback.
I love it. Good stuff. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. More good news. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Today, numerous court decisions demonstrate that there's often a conflict between the courts, the law, and religion. Has this conflict always existed? Not according to James Wilson. James Wilson was a signer of both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. He was a law professor as well as an original justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. James Wilson saw no conflict between religion and the law. In fact, just the contrary. He declared, human law must rest its authority ultimately upon the authority of that law which is divine. Far from being rivals or enemies, religion and law are twin sisters, friends, and mutual assistance. Indeed, these two sciences run into each other. In the views of Founding Father James Wilson, religion and good civil law were inseparable.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
We're back here on WallBuilders Live. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton. We're kind of wrapping up some of the good news towards the end of the year there in 2014 on our Good News Friday today, first Friday of the year. And David already got some wrap up on some Christmas good news, some of the football good news at the end of the year. Not good news of who won or didn't win, but just some of the good things that happened out there on some of the culture issues and just attitude issues and biblical issues. What else we got? Are we still in wrap up for 2014?
Yeah, we're going to look at some of the late decisions happening in the year. Here's one on marriage, interestingly.
So these are court decisions
These are court decisions on marriage. And
moving from the football field to the courtroom. I like it. All right.
It's battling both ways. You got fights going on, so we're still fighting. We're just in a different field of fight. This deals with the fact that we've really seen a lot of split decisions over marriage, whether state constitutions are allowed to maintain their status of saying marriage is man and woman. We've had over 30 states that have passed that by vote of the people. We've had 4 states by vote of the people go in a different direction. And then now we've had about 30, I think we're up to 35 or 36 states where the judges have said, no, you can't have marriage as a man and a woman. Now, that's where we're being told, oh, the train's left the station. You can't do anything, stop homosexual marriage. That's what it's going to be. And I go, wait a minute, the train hadn't left the station. You've only had 4 states that have voted this in. Everything else is judges telling the states what they'll do, as in striking down the Virginia marriage amendment or the Florida one, or striking down the one in Oklahoma, etc. So North Carolina. But interestingly, you have now a court that has gone the other way, and a court of appeals, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Sixth Circuit is what oversees Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And so you had a case there where that the Court of Appeals has upheld marriage. And I love, there's two things I want to read here from the Sixth Circuit. And by the way, this probably guarantees that the Supreme Court is going to have to take up the marriage issue again. They struck down the Defense of Marriage Act, which opened up for homosexual marriage at the federal level. But at that point, they said states can keep what they want, states can do what they want. And you ask, well, then, why in the heck are federal judges striking down all these state marriage amendments? Because the court said,
if they said leave it up to the states and let them decide, then what are these federal judges doing stepping in?
What they're doing stepping in is they think they're legislators, and I think they should be legislators. Right after we impeach them, get them back to public life, let them run for Congress, let them run for Senate, let them be. If they want to make policy, man, Constitution's given a place for making policy, but it's not the courts. And I love, and reading from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, I'm going to read part of what Circuit Judge Jeffrey Sutton wrote. He said, of all the ways to resolve this question, which is homosexual marriage, one option is not available: a poll of the 3 judges of this panel, or for that matter, all federal judges, about whether gay marriage is a good idea. Our judicial commissions did not come with such a sweeping grant of authority, one that would allow just 3 of us, just 2 of us in truth, to make such a vital policy call for the 32 million citizens who live within the 4 states of the Sixth Circuit. And that's great. You got a judge saying there's no way we're going to be making policy decisions. We're not. That's not our commission. He said our judicial commissions did not come with that grant of authority. We don't get to make policy. And so he took the position that the states have made their decisions here. They've made their will known. There's nothing in the Constitution takes us in the direction. And then here's what it explained. It said the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals said that based on the Baker v. Nelson decision, that it was still good law to have marriage as a man and woman. As the court said, quote, the court has yet to inform us that we are not, and we have no license to engage in a guessing game about whether the court will change its mind or, more aggressively, to assume authority to overrule Baker ourselves. And in the Baker decision, that's when the Minnesota Supreme Court said that marriage defined as a man and a woman did not violate the Constitution, and the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that that's not a federal question, and so Baker became the Supreme Court precedent, that marriage as a man and woman voted on by the state can stand. And so here you've actually got a federal court saying, look, the court already told us on this thing that the Minnesota marriage amendment was fine, man and woman marriage, if that's what the state wants, that's fine. We're not going to change that. So this is really good news because it is judicial restraint from a federal court, recognizing even what the Supreme Court had said, which actually was judicial activism, but they're saying, but we're not going to be activists. That's not our role, and that is really good news coming from federal courts.
Man, it's outstanding. I mean, it's reminiscent of that McCardle case where in the late 1800s they said, hey, we don't have the power, we don't have the right or the jurisdiction to step in and answer this question, it's been removed from us. And here they're essentially saying the same thing. They're just saying, hey, we're acknowledging constitutional limits, or in this case, a limit that the court has already decided to place on itself. We don't see that very often from any branch, let alone the courts.
That's exactly right, and that's really good that in the Sixth Circuit you've got some of the judges there on that panel that say, hey, we want to do what's constitutional, and that means we're not the policymakers, and that's great.
What was the David? There was 2 out of 3 that said that on the panel.
No, it was what he was saying was we as a 3-judge panel don't have that power, and he said, by the way, it's only 2 out of the 3 that would have that power, because you could have a 2-1 decision, and that means that only 2 judges out of the Sixth Circuit could impose homosexual marriage on 32 million Americans in those 4 states.
Yeah.
So what he said was, you don't give 2 judges that kind of power. The Constitution doesn't do that. And so he said 3 judges, and he said, well, in reality, it's only 2 judges because it just takes the majority of the 3-judge panel.
Yeah, it just seems like the attitude of all the political realm these days that nobody asks that question of, do we have the authority to answer this question? They just immediately go to, oh, here's a question, here's a debate, here's a need, here's a whatever, and they want to make a decision and take action on it. So it's just great to ask that first question. Are we even allowed to consider this question, or is there another level of government or branch of government that has the authority here? Man, if we could get everybody in government to ask that, it'd solve a whole lot of our issues. Got to take another quick break. But, David, that is some of the best news I've heard in quite some time. What a great way to start the year. More good news when we come back right here on WallBuilders Live. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Got a few minutes left for some more good news. If you want more than what we're going to be able to give you today, be sure and visit our website, wallbuilderslive.com. Click on Archives, and you can scroll through programs from the last several months, and all those Friday programs will have some more good news for you. David, what more can we squeeze in before the end of the day?
Well, we got a couple more that deal with the same kind of topics we've been touching on. One deals with a little football, but in that it deals with also sexuality. And that in Minnesota, you look at what they had there, the high school athletic league in Minnesota for the state was looking at enacting a policy that is being enacted all over the United States, which they often call bathroom bills, that transgender people can choose what bathrooms they want to go to. And at the high school level, which has been enacted in other states, you've got, and there's all sorts of affidavits now coming out of California, et cetera, that guys are saying, hey, I'm a girl. And so they end up in the girls' dressing room, girls' shower room, girls' locker room, etc. And so Minnesota was looking at doing the same thing, taking that bathroom bill and applying it in that state, which would not be surprising. They were one of the 4 states that moved in a direction away from marriage by their own vote. And so you look at that state, and it certainly is not a red state, and it is not really even a purple state. It's a pretty dark blue state. And so that means it is fairly liberal. And yet, after people showed up and weighed in and said, no, this is not what we want for high schools, it's interesting that the bureaucratic side of the state high school league, which means educrats, professional educators, they came out and voted that way. They said, no, we're not going to have transgender bathroom bill here. We're going to have recognized, identified sexuality. You'll be male or female. And so that's really good news, particularly coming out of that particular state.
Yeah, so this is not where we would normally expect it to come from. But, man, that bill is getting I mean, they're running with that in state after state after state. It's really ground zero on this issue of sexuality and marriage.
It is. And here's another one that's kind of interesting on sexuality and marriage, and it is measuring among Americans for what they think about same-sex marriage. And probably everybody is really aware that with young people, there tends to be a growing acceptance of same-sex marriage, except with young evangelicals. And it turns out that young evangelicals, fewer than 1 in 4 support same-sex marriage. And so they're looking like older folks and actually more conservative than older folks on the marriage issue, which was unexpected. I mean, we've been hearing that we're losing young people and the church is losing young people, et cetera, but apparently not on the marriage issue. So the recent
very unexpected.
Yeah,
what was the age group, Dave?
The age group was college age. So among college age evangelicals, and this is where they're getting their brains pounded in college from professors, you've got fewer than 1 in 4 college age evangelicals that support homosexual marriage. So that's moving the right direction.
That is shocking to me.
Yeah.
Shocking to me, bro. I mean, because everything else, that I thought, I mean, everybody's saying, we're, like you said, we're losing that age group. Man, that's fantastic. That means 3 out of 4 are with us, even out of that age group, on this issue of marriage. So good stuff. Good stuff. Lots of great news today, folks. You want some more? Go get it at wallbuilderslive.com. We appreciate you listening today to WallBuilders Live.
We stand under